Warning, this podcast may contain themes of eating disorders, depression, anxiety, mental health, and other sensitive topics. Viewer discretion is advised. Resources will be linked in the description box.
Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea Garman, and a fun fact about me is I'm graduating in 16 days.
Hi, my name is Sonia Kaiser, and a fun fact about me is I'm going on a cruise this summer.
My name is Caroline Harvick, and a fun fact about me is that I'm going to Amsterdam and Paris in less than a year. And welcome to BondCon Talks Wellness. Today's special guest is the lovely Lily. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Lily Glass. I am a middle grades language major. I'm a freshman, and my fun fact is we used to have a pet lionfish.
I'm going to go ahead and throw out another fun fact. She's getting married, too.
She is.
I think we are all engaged.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Look at that. Okay, so this module is kind of just talking about disabilities. It's kind of a very sensitive topic with a lot of, there's just so many out there, and so we're just going to be sitting here talking about this. Yeah, go ahead, Caroline. Let's start.
Okay, so while I was researching, I was looking like, what is the definition of a disability? And a lot of different definitions popped up, but I felt like this one, I really enjoyed what this one had to say. And it says, an individual with a disability is defined by the ADA, and I'm pretty sure that's the American Disability Association, as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, a person who has a history or record of such.
So, when people think disabilities, they most of the time think physical disabilities, like not able to walk, or you can even think like autism or Down syndrome. Those are disabilities, but you also got to think there's so many more. There's ADHD, OCD, ADD. There's so many out there that people just kind of don't really pay attention to, and it's really sad because a lot of the time people write them off as kind of like attention seeking, and that's not true at all. And so we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into the different types of disabilities and how people manage them and live with them. So, Miss Lily Glass, would you like to read an example of a disability?
So the example is, many children and adults have some type of special needs disability. The four major types of disabilities include physical, developmental, behavioral and emotional, and sensory impaired disorders. While many disabilities fall under one of these four umbrellas, many can fall under two or more.
Charles, would you like to talk about how you classify disability?
Sure. So according to the World Health Organization, disabilities have three dimensions: impairment in a person's body structure or function, or mental functioning. An example of impairments include loss of limbs, loss of vision, or memory loss, and activity limitations such as difficulty seeing, hearing, walking, or problem solving.
So like after discussing a little bit about that, while I was researching for this module, I personally do not have any experience with a disability, but I have been given the privilege and the opportunity this past semester through my Human Services Practicum to serve at the Center for Courageous Kids, CCK. And if you haven't heard of that, it's a medical camp where kids and their families come for free, and they get to be just a normal kid and enjoy, the program areas. There's fishing, there's bowling, arts and crafts, they get to ride horses, and it's all free to them, and they serve a population of disabilities. So I highly encourage, if you all have not had an experience working with people that have disabilities, to sign up and volunteer for CCK, or just even look at their website, because it has truly changed my outlook on people with disabilities and how to efficiently and effectively serve them, communicate them, all of that sort of.
CCK is definitely a very good example, especially because you get to see it in young children, and not only do you see how that affects that child's life, but you also see how it affects the parents' lives, the siblings' lives, because, you know, children with disabilities, it's very difficult to take on. You, like, people never really understand that it's pretty much a full-time job as well as a mother and a father, just because sometimes they need that little extra attention, and that's okay. And those children going to CCK and seeing those children in that area will just make your heart so happy. They're the happiest children you will ever see, and they're just so much fun to be around, and you can learn so much from those children.
Would you like that?
So when I decided to come on here and talk about disabilities, I had my two brothers in mind. And both of my brothers have ADHD and autism. And it started out with my older brother Russell, and we knew he had ADHD from a very young age. And when my brother Blake was born, we also seen that he had very severe autism. And it made us realize that my brother Russell had also had autism, but it went unnoticed for longer because of how different they are. And in the past 2 years, I've also recently been diagnosed with a disability of acute stress disorder from a car accident. And a lot of people think that you have to be born with a disability, but you can develop them very easily. Acute stress disorder is very similar to PTSD, of how veterans come back from the Army. So that is why this topic is very special to me.
I also, when I think disabilities, maybe because Laura comes into mind, she is 7 years old. When she was 2, she was diagnosed with Sanfilippo syndrome. And a lot of people have never heard of that. It's extremely rare. Only 5 children in the United States have it. But it is a disease. It's technically Alzheimer's for children. So she ages backwards. And most of the time, these children don't live past the age of 11. But, I watched my Aunt Brandy take care of Lorelai, and there's so much stress that's put on her body. Because Lorelai can now not walk, she can't eat, she has a feeding tube in, she can't talk. She's very, very dependent on her mom. And so for me, this is such a strong topic because, people need to be educated on disabilities. That way you can recognize them, you can understand and not make assumptions, because a lot of people do. You can understand what somebody goes through when they are firsthand exposed to a disability. So this is a very, very sensitive topic for me as well.
I thank you both for sharing that. Like I said, I don't really have any experience or family members or close relatives or friends, but with my service at CCK, I can truly see that there is such a stigma around kids to grown adults with disabilities. For example, I went to CCK and I served for the Angelman weekend, which is Angelman syndrome. And most of the kids there were nonverbal, and before going in, I thought it was going to be hard to connect with the kids or connect with the parents. I didn't really know what to expect, and then I came out of that weekend knowing how to communicate, knowing how to act, behave with kids with Angelman. And if I did not take that push to go to CCK, then I wouldn't have. And as a future therapist, I could very well have clients whose children have Angelman or have some type of disability themselves. So just going to CCK, it helps me prepare my future, but it also has taught me how to become an advocate for those with disabilities, because they are the ones that need true and honest advocacy the most. Okay. Which brings us to our next topic. Okay. Charles, do you want to speak on that?
Sure. Let's see. So, disability advocacy provides people with disabilities the knowledge to expand and defend their rights, support self-advocacy, and provide legal assistance. And here in our notes, we have identified 8 ways to advocate for a person with disabilities. And these include see the individual and the disability, engage in active listening, respect rights and decision-making, promote accessibility in your home and local community, respect needs for autonomy and self-determination, support self-direction, celebrate and support self-advocacy, and advocate for disability inclusivity and fight against discrimination. And I think these are all really important because, like we were talking about, there's often so many misconceptions about disabilities and people with disabilities and what they actually go through and what they experience. And because we, as a society, typically don't have that much knowledge on it, they face so many. They can face barriers with accessibility to services, places, things that we have access to because people aren't being mindful. So I think these are really important ways to acknowledge ways that you can help and be an advocate and be an ally.
I think I want to speak about Charles E. the Fourth way that she listed. It says to promote accessibility in your home and local community. And I know that we're all bonders here, so we all love to serve our community and want our community to thrive and be better. And I think a big part of that is providing accessibility for those with disabilities, because that is a huge population here in Adair County. And before joining Bonner and going to Lindsay, I really did not recognize that. And now that I'm here, I see that. And even though there is like places for kids or adults with disabilities to go, we can take it steps further, you know? So it's always just pushing and pushing for the best for these people.
I thought it was really, really amazing when we went to St. Augustine this spring break. We were able to set the foundation of them building a ramp at St. Augustine Lighthouse. That way, you know, people in wheelchairs were able to easily access, you know, the little shopping areas and things like that because they didn't have them before. And so we were setting the foundation, we were leveling out the ground for them to be able to form that ramp. And I thought that was so amazing.
I know, and I'm glad that you brought that up because in that moment, we had already been out there, like the day that I went to serve the Lighthouse. We had been out there for hours. I was already sick, like I already was about to pass out, and I felt like I couldn't go anymore. And then they were like, we really want you all to live out this ground because this is where we're gonna put a wheelchair ramp, because they said so many people had fallen because the ground wasn't level. And I remember thinking, I'm so tired, I just want to go home. And that, looking back on that now and seeing how I pushed through and we all came together and, you know, leveled out that ground, laid the sand down, that is going to help so many people in the future. And it is such a privilege to me that I have not experienced that. And it made me realize that just by doing that, I am helping so many people. And I think that's what service is all about. And advocating for these people is all about too. I was stuck in, you know, my thoughts of, oh, the sun is hot, oh, I'm tired. But I pushed through and I realized that I should not have been complaining in the first place. I'm just glad you mentioned that.
Do you want to go ahead and talk about the common misconceptions? Would you like to read those for us?
Yes, I can. So the first common misconception is only a small number of people live with a disability. The truth is, 1 in 4 Americans have a disability. The second common misconception is that people with disabilities are brave and courageous. Adjusting to a disability requires adapting to a lifestyle, not bravery and courage. The third misconception is people with disabilities always need help. The truth is, many people with disabilities are independent and capable of giving help. If you would like to help someone with a disability, ask if he or she needs it before you act. The fourth common misconception is the lives of people with disabilities are totally different than the lives of people without disabilities. The truth is, people with disabilities go to school, get married, work, have family, do laundry, grocery shop, laugh, cry, pay taxes, get angry, have prejudices, vote, plan, and dream just like everybody else. The fifth misconception is wheelchair use is confining. People who use wheelchairs are wheelchair bound. The truth about this is a wheelchair, like a bicycle or automobile, is a personal assistive device that enables someone to get around. It provides freedom for mobility. People do not have to be paralyzed to use a wheelchair. The sixth misconception is people who have developmental disabilities do not have the same feelings as people without disabilities. The truth of this is all people experience similar emotions, whether they express them in the same way or not. The last and seventh misconception is only people with mobility disabilities have accessible parking places. The truth is there are many conditions beyond visible mobility impairments that necessitate a parking place card.
I really like that Charles added this into the module so that we can speak about it. And I really would like to talk about how the myth is that people with disabilities are brave and courageous. But the truth is, adjusting to a disability requires adapting to a lifestyle, not bravery and courage. I feel like most people, when they hear that statement, they're like, no, it is bravery and courage. But in the reality of someone with a disability, that is their life, that is their reality. It's not brave or courageous, it's just their truth. And imagine I can imagine if I had a disability or struggling with something, somebody come up to me and was like, that's so brave, like, oh, you're out in public, that's so brave, or, blah, 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 this and that. But no, it's just that they are living their life just as everyone else would. So I think that, and I mean, at times I've also thought that, but I just think it's a really good reminder.
I feel like when people say that it takes bravery and courageousness, these people that have these disabilities, they're not getting to choose this lifestyle, and they don't get a choice on whether they still have to function as everybody else. To them, it's not brave. To them, it's just something that they have to deal with. And I've heard people come up to my brothers and say that they're brave or come up to my mom and say she's brave for taking my brothers out. Well, my brothers want to go to the grocery store. They want to pick out their favorite food. It's not bravery of my mom or my brothers. They're just trying to live their normal lives.
And I think small acts like that is advocating for your brothers. I think that it's important, and like I said, I don't have any experience with this. This is what I would hope that I would do in a situation like this. If I were to have a child with a disability, I would treat them the same as I was raised, because I want them to grow up thinking that they are not different than anyone else and that they are capable of the same things as everyone. And I think it's really important, and I think that we really need to stress on this, is that children with disabilities need to be treated the same, because if you leave them in the dark, it almost, I don't want to say it furthers that disability, but it does not make any progress, and it makes them feel alone. I have had conversations with people that have disabilities that their parents did not try to work with them or push them to, be social, and it really was detrimental to them. So I think it's really important. Like, it all goes back to advocating for them. Just like small steps like that. It doesn't have to be like hosting a drive or like, a protest or anything. It's just something simple like that. Taking them outside to the grocery store, to the movies, just anything like that.
And I really don't think people understand that when we, I hate to say when it's categorized, but like when a child is not treated the same as what everybody else is, it lowers their self-esteem, it can dampen their confidence, and it doesn't push them to want to achieve what everybody else does, because people are telling them that they're different. And so I think it's so important that we do advocate. My cousin, he is an extremely smart boy. He's 16, was diagnosed with autism when he was born. And he can do some things that I could never dream of doing. He loves to build. He's definitely gonna be an engineer one day. But he loves Legos. And he can dump all of his Legos out and it'll be like 10,000 pieces. And he can build whatever he wants with those Legos without even looking at a picture. And they tried to tell his mother that he did not belong in normal classes, that he needed special classes. And the only thing that was going through his head was, well, why, Mama? Why can't I be with the other boys and girls? Why do I have to be in this class? Why am I just the only one in my class right now? And so she pushed and pushed for him to be in a regular classroom where he wanted to be. And when he did, he had straight A's, was just fine working with the other kids. He was one of the most intelligent kids in that classroom, but they would have never known that if they'd have kept him in the class that he didn't want to be in. And so it is so important for us to advocate for these children and let them know, like, they deserve to be treated just like everybody else.
A story that I have about my brother is when we first moved down here, because we're originally from Nicholasville. And when we first came down here, my brother was, I think he was in 3rd or 4th grade. And 3rd or 4th grade is about the time that normal 9 and 10-year-olds learn to start multiplying. My brother has never been really all that great at math, but he's amazing at science. But I was better at math, and I tried to help him, but in the classroom, instead of conforming and trying to change the teacher's methods on how to teach him a little bit differently than the other children, she just told him to read a book and that he was too hard to teach and to go over there to the side. And now he's a freshman in high school who can't multiply because each teacher just continued to do the same thing and single him out. And this is really going to hurt him for his future.
That infuriates me.
Me too.
That literally infuriates me.
Because it's not even, I mean, everybody learns in a different way. Like, I'm terrible with sitting down and listening to a lecture. I'm not going to pick up one thing off of whatever my professor says. But I'm going to read a book and learn it myself, or I'm hands-on. That's how I learn. Not everybody's going to learn the same way, no matter what. So it's the fact that that teacher wasn't going to go out of her way to try to better a student who was more than capable. That frustrates me.
It's caused such an issue that my mom is pulling him, and they're moving back to Nicholasville to better his education and to have more accessible teaching methods to him, because he's struggling so much down here from when he was singled out as a child.
I feel like, not that it's common sense, but I feel like almost like people should realize how important it is not to single out anyone with a disability, but especially young kids.
Yeah.
I don't know, that like literally it's not really.
I think like a big issue is like a lot of people just see the disability and not the person, and that automatically makes them like change their behaviors to them and how they treat them. And like I feel like that's like what a lot of these misconceptions had to do with, is just like not seeing them as like an actual person and just seeing, oh, this is something different, I don't want to deal with it.
And also to like further that point, we've talked about some disabilities are hidden, and people that have hidden disabilities are treated perfectly normal, treated the same because it's hidden. And like you said, they don't see the disability, and that also that's also infuriating.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so on this topic of just, having knowledge about disabilities and field disabilities, this is really what we're going to focus on with the module challenge. So if you go into the link in the description where the Google Doc is, and you scroll down to the module challenge, it says, disabilities are often misunderstood and stereotyped. The general population is often not educated on the different types of disabilities or the experiences of those with disabilities. Take time this week to do your own research on disabilities and the experiences of those with them. And as you do your research, take notes on the new things you learn. After your research and after learning, take time to reflect on what you have learned and how this differs from your previous understandings. And this goes into more detail too throughout the journal prompts, but really just taking the time to educate yourself, see what misconceptions you may have that you're maybe not even aware of. And this is a huge part of just advocacy too for people with disabilities, because so many people often don't have the education on this topic, and that can lead to stereotypes and misunderstandings. So I think that's a really big step that a lot of people need to take.
I want to talk about a time that I noticed something very wrong going on, and I stood up and I advocated for one of my classmates that had autism. So my teacher was going to a conference that day, so we were going to have a substitute teacher. And this is nothing against substitute teachers. I love substitute teachers. I think they're very needed. I think that substitute teaching is a great opportunity for college students and older teachers that still love to teach. However, this substitute teacher on this particular day did not do right by this classmate. We were having to popcorn read. I think we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and he reads very slow, and we would all go around the room and it was our turn. And the first time she didn't say anything, but the second time she was like, okay, kind of hurry up, we're running out of time. And then by the third time she was like, you really need to hurry up and read. And at this point, because I had seen the mistreatment of my brothers and I knew that this was very wrong, I said, please stop, please give him some time. He is autistic, so reading is harder for him. And I could tell she was very mad at me for speaking out and for kind of quote unquote disrespecting her, but she was disrespecting my classmate, and I was advocating for him. And when my teacher came back the same day or the next day, and she had left a note, he read it and he threw it in the trash. And he thanked me for what I had done, because he knows that it is important to advocate for someone who can't or someone who is struggling.
I really thank you for sharing that, and also I think that is brave.
Yes.
To stand up to an authority figure, and then also as a high school student around your peers, sometimes standing up is not the right or not the cool thing to do, and I just think that that's really awesome and it's really brave. And it reminded me when I was in high school, there was this boy who used a wheelchair, and it was like a free period where I went to school, and we were all in the gym, and he was sitting on the bleacher with all of his friends, and some boys, the bell rang for us to go to our next period, and this boy went to grab for his wheelchair, and these boys took it and ran off and left him there and could not walk. And I remember I was getting so mad, and I was about to walk up to those boys, and this girl who was like as tall as me, littler than me, snaps that wheelchair from those boys and was like, you never ever do this again. And she brought the wheelchair back to that boy, and the impact that had on him, it also had an impact on me just witnessing that, because as it's hard being a teenager, you want to fit in, you want to do the cool thing, not the right thing, the cool thing. And just like that instance, and then that girl, like that is something that I don't think I will ever forget, because that made such an impact on me, and I know that boy, that made an impact on him. And I remember him thanking her so much, and she was just like, that's what I need to do. So, I don't know.
I like that you brought that up, because I think when you see somebody do the right thing, it makes you want to do the right thing. So the fact that made an impact on you and other people is gonna encourage them to also step up for other people in circumstances like that.
It's definitely a chain effect.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize the impact that they have when they do stand up, when they do advocate, like the impact that they have on other people who are like, yes, I also want to do that. Because it's not right to treat, it's definitely not right to treat anybody like that.
Something I always live by is I will always self-advocate for people with disabilities, or I will always stand up for them because it is something that I hope someone else will do for my brothers. So if I live by that, hopefully it will impact someone and they will do the same for my brothers one day.
I think we're gonna actually go ahead and talk about some different disorders and disabilities that people really don't realize are a disability. They're kind of just like swept under the rug. And then the first one that was listed was ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And most of the time students with ADHD tend to have less of a concentration when it comes to focusing. They are wanting to be active all the time. They want to move, whether it's like bouncing their leg or tapping their pencil or things like that. Things that we really wouldn't consider part of a disability. It says students with ADHD often have difficulty sustaining attention and maintaining focus while attending to lectures or reading. This can negatively impact their academic performance beyond what is typically observed in individuals at a comparable level of development. A way for us as the future generation, for us to accommodate to, making sure that they're learning like properly, doing little stretch breaks, just to get them up and moving. Making it interactive activities when we're teaching, like with lectures and things like that. If you are an education major, making like those lectures very interactive for them to be able to focus on it and to like it'll maintain their attention. Another one is listed as like learning disabilities. So this can be like dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, which I did not know existed. I guess I didn't realize that there was such a thing as dyscalculia, and that is actually very similar to dyslexia, but it's with numbers. I did not know that existed. But it's where you get your numbers mixed up. So it would be like a 6 and a 9 where you flip them. Dyslexia. As a child, I had severe dyslexia. I remember a story that my mom used to tell me. We'd sat down at a kitchen table. My sister, she's 4 years older than me. This is before I was even in kindergarten. And she was writing a sentence, and I said, "Mama, I want to write too." And so she said, "Okay, Soya." And she gave me my sister's paper, and on the line right underneath it, I wrote the sentence, but I wrote it completely backwards. I started on the right side of the page, and I flipped every letter. And it was perfectly written, but just backwards. Like, if you'd have held it up to a mirror, it would have been the right way. And I looked at my mom, and I was crying, and I said, "Mama, why doesn't mine look like my sister's?" And she looked at me, and she said, "Soya, it's because yours isn't supposed to look like Sissy's. It's supposed to be yours, and yours is unique." And so throughout school, when I started in kindergarten, my teacher spent extra hours making sure that I was reading properly and that I could write properly, because I mixed up about every letter that was in the alphabet. And now I'm an avid reader, and I read all of the time, and I have no issue with it. But it was because people took the time out of their day to help me learn and to help me achieve the goal that they knew that I could achieve, rather than just sweeping me away.
This is gonna sound really silly, but okay. If y'all remember, I was an avid Disney Channel watcher. Shake It Off with Bella Thorne and Zendaya. Okay. When I was little, I wanted to be Bella Thorne so bad. I loved her red hair. I just loved everything about her. And I remember one day I was sitting in my living room, on the floor, watching Disney Channel, and then that commercial popped up where she said that she had dyslexia. And I remember thinking, I must have been 7, 8, 9. I remember thinking, oh my goodness, that, like, I thought it was so inspiring, even though I did not have dyslexia. I remember thinking it was so inspiring that, you know, she was becoming very popular, and as a teenager, she still advocated for others, and even though, like, I did not have dyslexia, that still made an impact on me. I don't know. And, like, I know that's, like, part of, like, memes now or whatever. Like, I know that people, like, make a meme out of it, which is ridiculous, but I don't know. I just remember, like, thinking that was, like, super, super inspiring that she did that.
And the next disability is mobility disabilities. So even if a child is not in a wheelchair, you can normally tell if they have a limp or if they just struggle with walking a little bit more. It's very important for us to advocate for them. You know, like we said, get wheelchairs. Elevators in buildings are much easier than walking up the steps. And so, you know, accommodating sports and adapting a sport for them to feel included. That's very, very important. Medical disabilities such as asthma, diabetes, heart disease, things like that. It's very important for us to advocate for children.
I mentioned before, but I was in marching band, so like anytime like marching band's mentioned, like I like it pulls at my heart a little because it made such an impact on my life. But my fiance's sister's roommate. I know that's like a lot. Okay. Anyway, I'll just say my friend. My friend, she is from Texas, and she was actually in marching band. And there was this boy at her school that was in a wheelchair, and he wanted to do marching band so bad. And that year, she pushed him around the field in his wheelchair so that he could be in marching band. And we were watching videos one day, and I remember I started sobbing because that meant so much to me. I had no idea who this boy was. You know, he was across the country, but just seeing that, like, even though he was in a wheelchair, he could still participate in marching band, which is a lot of physical activity. It really pulls at your heartstrings. And I think sports, like that's a big subject with disabilities. Sports, kids with disabilities need to be included in sports.
Absolutely. I see these videos of, I remember this one, it was a little boy on the basketball team, and he was a lot smaller than all the other guys. He was maybe in 4th or 5th grade, and his teammates kept giving him the ball so that he could shoot it, and he finally made it, and everyone in that gym stood up and was cheering as loud as they possibly could, and you could tell the effect that it made on that little boy by the smile on his face. And I just think that's so wonderful for us to be able, like, when we include those kids, it's giving them a sense of purpose, and it's letting them know that I can do everything else that anyone else can do. And so I just think that's so amazing. We can go ahead. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap up. Those were just a few kind of disabilities that, you know, are very, very common. And a few of them were very known. But there's also some out there that you wouldn't even classify as a disability, but it really is. And so it's just very, very important because one, you never know what a person's going through. You never know what they have going on in their life. You never know if they do have a disability or not. So it's always important to give them, to have patience and grace and, you know, to be just as accepting with just everyone.
And that's why I think that Charles E. wrote the module challenge for his module. I think it's really important that she emphasizes researching and learning and writing down in your journal prompts what you have learned. I think it's really important and can be beneficial if you all choose to do so.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for joining us. Is everybody's hearts, minds, everything clear? All right.
A happy person has a healthy mind.
Bye.
Bye.